Good evening. I'm Brittany Ramsey. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. Premier Doug Ford is fighting back against allegations his new stay-at-home order is confusing. Critics say the definition of what constitutes an essential trip is unclear, and enforcement guidelines still haven't been spelled out. But Ford says those who are confused should simply just use their best judgment. Colin DeMello has more.
6 hours to go until a mandatory stay-at-home order comes into effect, and there is confusion about exactly what it all means.
I think it would be advantageous if we had rules that were clear and consistent across the region and across the province.
The Ford government enacted a state of emergency amid the second wave of the pandemic and issued an order to remain at home unless absolutely necessary.
If you're not sure if a trip is absolutely essential, it probably isn't. So please, you must stay home.
But the provincial orders seem to have glaring contradictions. You can still go outside for work, for groceries, to the doctor's office, to exercise, and for limited social gatherings. And dozens of recreational amenities will still remain open. There are also no limits on how many times you can leave your home and how long you can stay outside.
On the one hand, we're told you have to stay indoors, you have to stay inside of your own home. In the same breath, they're saying, but you can gather in groups of 5 outdoors. How does that make any sense?
Day ahead of the midnight deadline, the Premier fired back.
There is no confusion here. It's very simple. Stay home. And for anyone who says, or elected officials, you aren't being responsible, be responsible. The message is simple. Stay home.
That message will be backed up with fines, jail time, and possible stops by police.
If you are not at your place of residence and you need to be fined or you will be ticketed as a result of the orders, they have an obligation to ask for your name, date of birth, and address.
Showing just how serious the province is about controlling COVID-19.
The district's medical officer of health believes the provincial stay-at-home order was a necessary step up from the lockdown imposed on Boxing Day. Dr. Janet DeMille is hopeful that the latest restrictions from the government will be what's needed to finally flatten the curve of this second wave. Corey Nordstrom has more.
In order to curb the spread of COVID-19 across Ontario, the government's regional approach was scrapped with the lockdown and is continuing that line with the newest measures. Despite complaints from many in the north that the lockdown was already too strict, Dr. Janet DeMille stands by the furthering of restrictions, saying that our trend wasn't too different from many areas in the southern parts of the province.
I was seeing case numbers increase in areas that were more similar to our area, more rural, more spread out, and their numbers were going up as well. So I knew that could impact us here. I was quite concerned about the potential implication of the overall rising case numbers in our area.
DeMille has high hopes that the 4-week stay-at-home order and declaration of a state of emergency will be what the province needs to get the case numbers under control. But if even that doesn't turn things around, she says the next big target will have to be the classrooms.
Schools are open currently. That's a big measure to close in-person instruction, like in schools, and go to remote learning only, and that has a very significant impact. I am really hoping that won't be necessary here.
Meanwhile, there's still no update on when the Moderna vaccine will arrive in Thunder Bay. In late December, DeMille said the health unit had ordered a freezer capable of housing that vaccine at temperatures around minus 20 degrees Celsius. Now, 3 weeks later, the freezer still hasn't arrived, and she still isn't positive when the vaccine is coming to the district.
Moderna might be coming our way, but we don't have any details about that right now. We're just getting prepared, and many of our partners are getting prepared so that we can get those immunizations to people who need them, to people who want them as quick as we possibly can.
Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
Meanwhile, more details are coming to light regarding which outdoor recreational activities are allowed once the stay-at-home order takes effect at midnight. The province has now confirmed that skating, tobogganing, and cross-country skiing will be permitted, but the rules around ice fishing and snowmobiling are still unclear. Jonathan Wilson reports.
Being able to stay open is a real bonus for people that need to get out and do some exercise.
Canview General Manager Dave Sutty says he and the cross-country skiers were breathing a sigh of relief upon hearing that their sport could continue under the new restrictions. But he says things looked a lot gloomier on Tuesday after Premier Ford's announcement about the stay-at-home order.
We definitely talked to a few people that were coming out here yesterday to ski that were thinking that this might be their last ski of the season. We were definitely a little bit on edge here at Canview, but fortunately we made it through again.
Meanwhile, downhill ski areas will continue to be closed by the province, at least until February 11th. Officials with the City of Thunder Bay are still waiting for confirmation about city rinks, but according to numerous sources, it appears they will be able to remain open to users, along with local sliding hills and some other winter activities.
So there are a number of things that are listed that can be open, that are outdoor amenities. Parks where people can go, skating rinks, dog sledding or cross-country skiing or snowshoeing. I believe all of those are able to open. What we're waiting for is the actual regulation and any further guidance from the various ministries about those.
A spokesperson with the Ministry of Natural Resources says she was still waiting for clarification about ice fishing as of late Wednesday afternoon. As for snowmobiling, the Thunder Bay Police Traffic Unit has not yet received any updates on the rules.
We haven't really discussed it on our end, I guess, and it's I know there's a lot of questions about what is and what isn't, so I think everybody's hoping we'll have some answers soon, but at this point in time, I don't have an answer for that.
Some sources have indicated that snowmobiling will be allowed. Officials with Thunder Bay Adventure Trails say they're taking a business-as-usual approach for now until they're told otherwise. Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.
14 new cases of COVID-19 have been confirmed at the Thunder Bay District Jail, which is sparking concern among staff at the facility. The first 2 cases popped up last week, followed by 2 more on Sunday. All of them involve inmates, but there's still no confirmation as to where or who the first point of contact was. OPSEU Local 737 President Bill Hayes says the infected inmates are all confined in areas of the intake unit and are currently isolating from the rest of the facility. No correctional officers have contracted the virus so far, and Hayes says jail staff is to be tested by the end of the week. He says a situation like this is exactly what they were worried about since the beginning of the pandemic back in March.
We've always said once it gets in here, it's going to be trouble controlling. It's just the nature of the building and the overcrowding. We're still dealing with lots of overcrowding issues. In the past 3 weeks to a month, the numbers have just kept climbing and climbing, and we knew we were in bad shape, especially with the number of COVID cases in the community. And we knew once it got in here, it's going to be hard to control, and sure enough, here we are.
Officials say staff are working very diligently to maintain all safety precautions, including wearing the correct PPE and social distancing. Hayes says they're also in contact with public health to ensure the virus does not spread outside of the facility. Now, the 14 COVID cases at the jail represent most of the 18 new cases announced today by the District Health Unit. One of the other new cases is at Southbridge Roseview, and it's believed to be a staff member. The facility's website also announced another death today. 21 Roseview residents have now died since the outbreak there was declared in November. The remaining 3 new cases are all from the Thunder Bay area. 2 are due to close contact, and the other is unknown. That brings the total case count to 689, and the number of active has climbed again up to 83. There are still 3 COVID patients in hospital. 2 of them are in the ICU. Meanwhile, the health unit announced another outbreak at Hogarth Riverview Manor last night. 1 staff member has tested positive, impacting 2 units on the 4th floor of the seniors' home on Lily Street. This follows a similar case at the HRM on January 1st when a single staff member in a different part of the facility tested positive. It appears a Thunder Bay company will be the one to construct the multi-use turf facility at Chapels Park. Among the 4 companies that were approved to make final applications, Tom Jones Corporation has submitted the lowest bid. Their submission comes in just under $37.4 million, including HST. The city is eligible for an HST rebate. However, that covers virtually all of the federal and provincial taxes. That should bring the cost of the project down to about $33 million, which is in line with the estimates put forward by city staff. Contract coordinator Kelvin Jankowski says the bids are still being reviewed, but it's unlikely city staff would recommend proceeding with any other company.
We went through a request for pre-qualification process where we vetted the contractors prior to tendering so that we wouldn't get into a situation where we may have any type of contractor bidding on it, and then that might come into play. But for these purposes, the contractors that bid on this project are all have good reputations, good experience in the construction industry. They've all proven their bondability and they have a good track record.
Now, City Council still has to give final approval when the contract is presented. It will likely come to them next month. If it's approved, some preliminary work could begin at chapels in March or April, and construction will likely begin in May. Meanwhile, City Council is set to begin debating the 2021 budget next week. Last night, City staff presented the annual long-term financial overview to provide councillors with a high-level look at the projections over the next 5 years. As Ryan Benazzo tells us, some on council are more concerned than others.
At the direction of City Council, administration delivered a proposed 2021 budget that contains an overall tax levy increase of 2.15%. That number falls to an even 2% once you factor in growth of Thunder Bay's tax base last year. But according to the annual long-term financial overview presented on Tuesday evening, those increases could be significantly higher in years to come.
The increases are estimated to stay above a 3% increase up to 2025 when it drops to 2.31.
That's an after-growth figure, and it doesn't include some major projects which may well go ahead, like a new police headquarters and the demolition of Victoriaville. Council Budget Chair Mark Bentz says those numbers are unacceptable in the wake of the pandemic that's left many struggling to make ends meet.
Over a 4-year period, like a 13% increase compounded. That's in 4 years. And these could be a very difficult 4 years for a lot of people. I mean, many of us around the table won't bat an eye at those increases, quite honestly. But there are a lot of people in our community that will.
These projections are only a starting point and can change drastically based off of future decisions of council. For example, last year's long-term overview projected a 3.75% increase, more than 1.5 percentage points higher than the proposed number that was released last week. For reference, each percentage point represents about $2 million that has to be collected from city taxpayers. Mayor Bill Morrow maintains that he's not worried by these preliminary figures.
The long-term tax increases of 3.5 over the next 3 years, yeah, that's a big number. But remember, it's a starting point. And I think in the past, if you went back 3 or 4 or 5 years, administration probably came back to councils with starting points that were even higher than that. We're in relatively good shape.
Members of the public now get a chance to provide virtual deputations on this year's budget on Thursday evening. Full details are on the city website. Councillors will begin debating the document next week. Ryan Benazzo, TBT News.
Thunder Bay Police are reporting another child pornography arrest. It comes after the service's cyber crimes unit uncovered online child sexual abuse material back in November that led to the execution of a search warrant at a Pearl Street address on Tuesday and the seizure of some electronic devices. 43-year-old Yvonne Andre Haddad has been charged with 1 count of possession of child pornography. Haddad has been released on bail with a future court date in February. A group of First Nations organizations have joined with police services to launch the Am I Missing campaign in the Sioux Lookout area. The campaign was first launched in Thunder Bay in 2018, following a key recommendation from the 7 Youth Inquest. Today's virtual launch in Sioux Lookout is to increase awareness in urban communities where NAN youth attend school and where people from remote communities reside. The campaign highlights 3 important steps that should be taken before calling police for help in locating a missing person. First is to try and find them by contacting their family and friends. Step 2 is to assess the risk to determine if there's reason to believe the missing person could be in danger. If those attempts are unsuccessful, Step 3 is to call police to file a missing persons report. Norma Kedjic with the Northern Anishinaabe Education Council says they want to dispel the myth that people have to wait 24 to 48 hours before reporting a missing person.
We know that if you have a loved one that's missing, like Derek said, you don't want to wait. There's no time to wait. Every second counts when you're looking for somebody that you believe is missing.
The work needs to continue like we're doing right now. virtually and in any way possible to ensure that when people do go missing, when that time comes, that we have something or that we're working on something to ensure that we can help those families and those people that go missing.
Campaign officials want to thank the OPP, Anishinaabe Police Service, and Thunder Bay Police for their continued partnership and support with the campaign. The cleanup around the recently demolished Oddfellows building is nearing its final stages, with hopes that May Street can reopen by the end of the week. The demolition of the building began on Saturday morning, resulting in the closure of a section of May Street between Donald and George Streets, mainly for safety reasons. The building was completely torn down by Saturday night, and today demolition crews continued to remove debris from the site. The street closure is expected to last until this Friday as workers continue to prepare the area for regular traffic to resume. The major success of the Intercity 50/50 cash draw has inspired a similar draw that will also aid the Regional Health Sciences Foundation. Last month's draw raised more than $28,000 for the cardiovascular campaign, the highest total in its 20-plus years. This new fundraiser is called Thunder Bay 50/50 and will have monthly draws, with the first one happening on February 26th. Foundation CEO Glenn Craig says tickets will be sold online, and he explains that the foundation's half of the cash, what it'll go towards.
This money will help towards capital equipment, the medical equipment that we need to provide to our professionals. Dollars are tight right now. Every year it seems that it's a little tighter, and this will go a long way to make sure that we put the right tools in the hands of our professionals.
The draw will also have 2 early bird prizes. Tickets and information are available on the website thunderbay5050.ca.
Well, Fiona, I don't know about you, but I wasn't too comfortable last